Most of you, I think, know me, but let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Democrat, a second-generation activist in this area. My mother ran for assembly here in 1980. And I've been very active. I am a member of this club. I'm vice president of the North Valley Democratic Club up in Northridge. I serve on county committee, represent you there. I'm the secretary of county committees, 38th Assembly District and Region 1. I'm on the executive board of the California Democratic Party and serve on the legislative committee there. So I'm active in a lot of different ways. But I got into working on nuclear safety recently, in part because of my background. That I was a physics major when I was a student at Caltech. And so it's given me some experience working with the kinds of radioisotopes that we're hearing about a lot in the news lately, like cesium-137. And so I have some practical experience with just how much respect you need to give to these types of isotopes. I didn't stay with physics. I'm not a physicist now. I'm a computer engineer. I'm chief technology officer at an electronics company in Chatsworth that does its own manufacturing in Chatsworth, and I'm very proud of that fact. I'm not a nuclear engineer. I have, however, kept as a hobby staying in touch with physics and looking in and understanding nuclear issues, what information is publicly available, so that I can apply it to what we do in politics. We keep saying that it's important that we base our policy on sound science. And so what I want to do is give you some of that science and help you understand the science so that we can make intelligent policy decisions and help spread the word to other people. Perhaps not being a nuclear engineer is actually an advantage because it means I have no connections at all to the energy industry. And so I'm taking a look at this as an outsider. Now, among the people in different fields in science and engineering, they joke with each other about the idiosyncrasies that people in the different fields have. Friendly joking. And so one of the stories goes that there was a mathematician, a physicist, and an engineer who were traveling through England for the first time. And they're taking a train ride through England, and the engineer looks out the window and sees a black sheep. And he says, "Oh, what do you know? The sheep in England are black." The physicist says, no, you cannot conclude from seeing one sheep that all of the sheep are black. All you know is that this sheep is black. And the mathematician says, no, that's not quite right either. All we really know is that this side of this sheep is black. So the point here is that when we're analyzing science and thinking about the policy that it teaches us, we don't want to overinterpret or underinterpret what the evidence says. And so when we look at what happened in Fukushima, we don't want to underinterpret it and think that the way things happened in Fukushima, this is the only reactor that could ever have a meltdown. It couldn't happen anywhere else. It only takes a weird combination of an earthquake that was bigger than anybody thought could happen there and a tsunami that was bigger than anyone thought could happen there. It'll never happen again. You don't want to underinterpret that. But maybe on the other hand, you don't want to overinterpret either. Can we necessarily say, because of what happened in Fukushima, that all nuclear reactors are unsafe? Well, maybe they all are. But, maybe Fukushima by itself doesn't tell us that. And so we have to look at other things. And so we look at what happened in Santa Susana. I don't know if all of you know, the very first meltdown that happened in the United States happened right here on the edge of Los Angeles in Santa Susana. Back in, I think it was 1959, they had a partial meltdown that spewed radiation across the Simi and San Fernando valleys. And the cleanup is still going on all of these years later. And then, there have been other very well-known accidents. There's been 3 Mile Island, and there's been Chernobyl. And so we have a number of examples that we can go on and try to make some conclusions about what the safety is of reactors in general.
Do you know anything about the one in Missouri that's underwater because of the flood?
I think you mean Nebraska.
Nebraska? Okay.
Yeah, okay. And by the way, please do interrupt with questions. I'd really like this to be a dialogue. I know when I've gone around, a lot of people have a lot of questions on this topic, and so I'm really happy to do whatever I can to answer your question. So the question was, what about the 2 nuclear reactors that are threatened by the floods in Nebraska? And I'm going to be talking to you a lot about one particular design of nuclear reactor. That's the design that's in Fukushima, and that's the Mark I reactor. And of the 2 reactors that are threatened by the floods in Nebraska, one of them is a Mark I reactor. Luckily, it's the one that is not as much in danger. The one that has already been shut down by the floods is a different design and seems to be handling the floods so far pretty well. The Mark I reactor, last I heard from a reliable source, I heard it was 18 inches away from being shut down as far as the water level. And I heard something today that said 3 inches. I didn't have time to go and confirm that. But it's getting really close to where they may have to shut that one down too. And if it gets shut down, and if the floodwaters keep rising, and it loses power to its coolant, we're in exactly the same situation as Fukushima. And that is a very scary situation that we need to keep a very close eye on.
Now, I saw an interview with, I believe it was a physicist from MIT or somewhere, and he said that one of the only things that I remember, because my memory is very short these days, but he said that the reactor in San Onofre was installed backwards.
Yes, there was.
And he laughed. He said, "It's such a joke. Everyone in the field knows that that is a terribly designed nuclear reactor."
There are 2 domes there that are mirror images of each other. And a major component of the containment structure, when they ordered the parts, they forgot to tell the people they were ordering it from that they were mirror images. And so one of them was built backwards from how it should have been. And so they had to sort of squeeze it in and do a little bit of cutting and get it to wedge in and fit. And so it's not as good a situation as it should be. They claim that they made the fixes necessary to bring it up to what it needs to be. But yes, that is one of the concerns with San Onofre of have they really done enough there? And as we go through this talk, I think you'll see the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has really not done enough over the years to rein in what goes on with these reactors. And in a lot of ways, the real problem is not nuclear power or coal. The real problem is greed. And unless we have really good, strong regulation, we're going to have problems with the greed. Okay, so I just mentioned coal, and that brings up another area, which is we want to shut down these nuclear reactors. Germany is on a plan to shut down all of their nuclear reactors, but it's still an 11-year plan to shut them down. So shutting them down is not easy. It's not going to be something that happens overnight, but it definitely over the next few decades, it's something we need to be looking at doing. And certainly the ones that are most dangerous, like the Mark I reactors, we want to be getting shut down as quickly as possible. But if we do push to shut down the nuclear reactors, then what ends up happening instead? Well, if things happen in the short term, what's going to happen is they'll replace that power by pouring more coal into the coal power plants. And as bad as nuclear can be, coal is worse. The way I like to put it is, imagine that there were only 2 places you could live. Like, you had to pick between 2 jobs, and one was going to live over next to this place, one over here. One is next to a coal power plant, one is next to a nuclear power plant. Now, the real answer is you don't want to live in either place.
That's right.
But if you have to live in one of those 2 places, which would you pick? Really, I would pick the nuclear. Because as dangerous as nuclear is, think about what coal has done. Think about the coal ash and the black lung disease.
And mercury in the ocean.
Absolutely. Mercury and so many different things, so many different ways. Fires, pipeline problems, when you start talking about fossil fuels in general, BP oil spill or Exxon Valdez oil spill, fossil fuels have done an enormous amount of damage to all of us. And even when you consider how much more fossil fuel power there is in the world than nuclear power, fossil fuel has done way more than its share more damage. So we really need to be on top of the fossil fuel power as well. Yeah.
I was just saying, would you rate also the nuclear risk is so infrequent? I mean, it's very catastrophic when it happens, but it is so rare, whereas the coal is ongoing every day.
Right. Absolutely. So, Dave?
Another way of looking at it is that coal may kill you. Nuclear is going to kill your grandchildren's grandchildren.
Right. Or another way of looking at it is to look at Chernobyl, which is the one really big disaster we've had where we have some good data on how much it's really affected the people. It's too early around Fukushima to really know what the result is going to be there. But the best numbers that I've been able to see, and there's a lot of disagreement here, but the best numbers that I've seen on the effect of Chernobyl is that eventually, over the next 100 years or so, it will cause tens of thousands of people to get cancer and die of cancer that would not have otherwise. Now, some have estimated hundreds of thousands, some have estimated lower numbers. The most reliable that I've found, that I believe, is something like 10 or 20,000. And that's all over Europe. And the reason why it's all over Europe is because of the horrible design with Chernobyl. That not only was there no containment around the reactor, but the reactor was made out of carbon, which was necessary for controlling the neutrons in the reactor. And the carbon burned really, really hot. And when we have the forest fires around here and you see the big plume going up a mile up into the sky and then it cuts across horizontally, that's the kind of fire that they had at Chernobyl. It pushed the soot, and with the soot, lots of radioactivity way up high into the atmosphere, up into the jet stream and into other air currents that then spread it all over Europe. On the other hand, you take a look at what happened at Fukushima. If you saw the videos of the explosions they had there, they looked very different. The smoke went up a very short distance and then went horizontally. It didn't get pushed up nearly as high. So the Fukushima radiation didn't get spread around nearly as much as Chernobyl. And that seems to be backed up by a lot of data that's available. And a lot of people have said to me, well, you can't trust the government data. And certainly you shouldn't just inherently trust the government data. But there's a lot of other data. A lot of private citizens, scientists have made measurements. And the numbers that they've come up with have all been consistent with what the government has come up with. So it seems like they're all pretty good numbers. And as far as the radiation that has reached here in the United States, it's all been a fairly low number. I have a chart here. If you flip the handout open, and it's meant to flip upward. So it's a two-page diagram that you hold one part above the other to have a single pyramid.
Remember that exponential.
Yes. And so this is showing dangers from a variety of different things. And one thing that's a little bit misleading about this triangle is it makes it look like this chart is linear, and it is not. As Dave just mentioned, it's exponential. And what does that mean? Up, if I hold the microphone and this at the same time.
Let me hold it for you.
Okay.
Okay.